Pakistan's worsening climate crisis, from devastating floods to rising heat waves and water stress, took center stage in Islamabad on Wednesday as the second edition of the Breathe Pakistan International Climate Change Conference opened with calls for urgent action, stronger implementation, and coordinated policy making. Organized by Dawn Media, the two-day conference brought together policymakers, development partners, financial institutions, and climate experts to discuss the country's growing vulnerability despite contributing less than 1% to global carbon emissions. Opening the conference, Dawn CEO Naz Afreen Sehgal Lakhani said climate change was no longer a distant threat but a lived reality for Pakistan and the wider region. She warned that floods, air pollution, water scarcity, and extreme heat were becoming recurring shocks with consequences for economic stability, public health, and development.
Pakistan is among the most climate vulnerable countries in the world, facing increasingly severe floods, heat waves, water stress, and dangerously poor air quality. These are no longer abstract risks or rare phenomena, they are recurring shocks. Behind every statistic showing up on our screens are real lives. Farmers are losing entire harvests, families are forced to leave their homes, children are growing up in hazardous air, and communities are rebuilding after each disaster only to face the next one. The 2022 floods made this painfully clear, affecting over 33 million people and causing more than $30 billion in losses. They showed how quickly climate shocks can become economic shocks and how deeply they can undo years of development gains. In 2025, monsoon rains and flash flooding once again devastated large parts of the country, particularly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Punjab, claiming at least 1,000 lives and affecting nearly 7 million people nationwide. Pakistan has also continued to face intensifying heat extremes. In Sindh, in 2025, prolonged heatwave conditions saw temperatures rise by 4 to 6 degrees. In parts of the province, temperatures climbed to around 49 degrees Celsius, placing immense strain on public health systems, energy infrastructure, and vulnerable communities.
Pakistan People's Party's Senator Shahir Rahman said the global climate movement had become fragmented and increasingly overshadowed by geopolitical conflict, warning that the environmental cost of wars continued to go uncounted.
But here's the problem that I've been seeing for the last few years, before anything had particularly changed, is that all climate ambition or goals are based on a carbon budget, as they have to be. You have to base it on the science of calculating and taking stock of how much carbon we're using and how much we're offsetting. Based on that, we are in the lived reality, as Ms. Naz Afreen said, in the lived reality of 53 degrees centigrade in the summer in parts of Pakistan. I come from Karachi, where it is already 42, 43 degrees, and then the app tells you it feels like much more, and you already have people struggling to deal with this level of heat, and the heat is obviously related exponentially to the amount of carbon and greenhouse gases in the environment. We all know that. But while the global crisis is staggering, what is equally is the state of the global movement itself. It is 2026 and it is spectacularly delegitimized, it is defunded, it is divided, and it is also derided.
UN Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator Muhammad Yahya described Pakistan as not only a victim of climate change but also a potential test case for solution.
You really don't have to be a scientist to see the receding glaciers. A quick conversation with local community will tell you what they're seeing. And for Pakistanis, I think you've seen these constant floods that damage every year. The country loses billions of dollars. I was thinking actually while I was sitting there, the losses from every year financially is probably equivalent to the IMF program that Pakistan is in it in terms of finance. Billions of dollars are lost every year. On Monday, Senator Shahir Rahman will probably know she was in Karachi. The temperatures there when I'm told the highest has been protected.
While Climate Change Minister Musaddiq Malik stressed the need to invest in young people and innovation.
اور بلوچستان میں تو آپ سب جانتے ہیں کہ کبھی قحط، کبھی بارش نہیں، کبھی زرخیزی نہیں، لوگ جپسیز کی طرح ایک جگہ سے دوسری جگہ پانی کی تلاش میں نکلتے. تو عجیب سا نہیں لگتا آپ کو؟ عجیب سا نہیں لگتا کہ ایک ملک 4 کونے، 4 کہانیاں، 4 چہرے، مگر ایک ہی بربادی. تو عجیب سا نہیں لگتا؟ بھائی مجھے تو بہت لگتا ہے. تو اس کانفرنس کا نام رکھا ہے، بہت اچھا سا نام ہے، بریتھ پاکستان، سانس لو. تو میں آپ کو بتاتا ہوں کہ سانس کیوں نہیں آتا. سانس اس لیے نہیں آتا کہ جہاں پہ 4 سیلاب گزریں اور 7,000 لوگ مر جائیں، جو جنگ میں بھی نہ مرے ہوں، پھر سانس نہیں. اگر 20,000 لوگ زخمی ہو جائیں 4 سیلابوں میں، 20,000، اور ڈسیبل ہو جائیں، لاچار ہو جائیں، تو پھر سانس نہیں. اگر 40 ملین، کتنے ہوئے بھائی؟ 10 ملین کا 1 کروڑ ہوا، تو 4 کروڑ لوگ ڈسپلیس ہو جائیں 4 سیلابوں میں، تو پھر سانس نہیں. اور جب ایک صوبے میں 1 کروڑ 10 لاکھ بچے، 1 کروڑ 10 لاکھ بچے جن کی عمر 5 سال سے کم ہو، وہ سانس نہ لے پائیں، کیونکہ تقریباً 100 گنا جو سانس لینے کے لیے جو سیف ہوا ہے، 100 گنا اس سے زیادہ ہوا خراب ہو، 100 گنا.
Throughout the day, discussions focused on disaster risk reduction, climate finance, water governance, food security, and legislation. Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb called for climate action to move beyond isolated discussions and become part of mainstream economic planning.
Bank meeting, we had about, because 100 سے زیادہ finance ministers ہوں گے from all over the world, in terms of the coalition of finance ministers for climate action. And the operating word is action. جو ابھی پہلے بھی بات کی جا رہی تھی, from Baku to Belem to Turkey this year in terms of the COP. So what and why, تو سب کو معلوم ہے. We are living this day in and day out here in Pakistan. And for us, it's a reality. Equally, it's also quite clear, and that's why the finance ministers are coming together, that we have to work very closely with our counterparts, with the ministers of climate change, the ministers of planning, and discussion hi rahegi. If you don't bring it down into your budgets, if you don't bring it down in terms of your resource allocation, then, as I said, it will remain a debating club. And as Pakistan, we cannot afford to be that at this point in time.
While experts from the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and AIIB highlighted the widening financing gap facing developing countries.
You can mobilize with millions of financing billions of large packages. So just if you look at 2 examples, South Africa, the World Bank and IFC has worked with the government of South Africa to do a package of about more than $8 billion for their energy transition, away from fossil fuels, away from coal. That has limited amount of financing from World Bank and IFC, but private sector investment is willing to come forward and complete that package. Similarly, a few years ago, many of you have attended COP27 in Egypt. You would have seen that Egypt launched a platform, a Nawafi platform, for water energy nexus platform, where they invited investment from international sources, of course concessional, but then also public and private sector investment, so that they can work together to mobilize more than $10 billion of finance. That's just one example on how large sums of financing are being lent. Of course, capital markets, and I won't speak too much more about it, green bonds are being issued in many countries, including in Pakistan. Congratulations on issuing first local currency denominated green bond last year as well, with the participation of banks, commercial banks in Pakistan.
Water experts warned that the Indus Basin was under growing pressure from glacial melt, declining river flows, and shrinking delta systems, with calls for long-term planning and sustainable governance.
On the institutional side, Pakistan needs an independent national water authority with genuine enforcement power, not another advisory sort of river body. River basin authorities with multi-stakeholder governance. Trust me, we need to build this capacity, including farmers, civil society, and local governments, not just bureaucrats and engineers. Nothing wrong with bureaucrats, but there are more people in society. Real-time monitoring infrastructure across the entire basin, which we do not do, and a permanent Indus Commission that is permanently and politically protected, adequately resourced, and empowered to assert Pakistan's legal rights. On the international strategy, every violation of Indus Water Treaty must be documented meticulously and asserted at every available international forum. The ICJ, international arbitration, multilateral climate negotiation. Pakistan should be actively building coalitions with other downstream nations facing upstream pressure. And this is critical, domestic water efficiency is a diplomatic asset. Pakistan strengthens its legal argument that it is not the wasteful party in this relationship. This must be something that we focus on. As President Kennedy, again, somebody else quoted there whom you can't really see, said at one point in time, so I will sort of reiterate that, anyone who can solve the problems of water will be worthy of 2 Nobel Prizes, since those are very much in the news these days. One for peace and one for science. That is not hyperbolic, it is a precise statement of what is at stake.
In discussions on agriculture and food security, speakers warned that unpredictable weather patterns, floods, and supply chain weaknesses were already affecting farmers and food production across the country.
Partnered with the Dawn Media Group from the very beginning, believing in the criticality of this topic. As chairperson of the Pakistan Business Council, to highlight the role and responsibility of the private sector of Pakistan, and as patron of the Pakistan Agriculture Coalition, who are doing commendable work in this field, and above all, as a concerned Pakistani citizen. All those hats, one concern, the future of food in Pakistan.
The final session focused on legislation and enforcement, with lawmakers stressing that Pakistan's biggest challenge was no longer policy formation but implementation. Day 2 of the conference will continue on Thursday at the Serena Hotel in Islamabad, with discussions expected on energy transition, climate equity, and private sector mobilization.